The Lowe Post is brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast, Heat-a-Palooza, and there is no better person to talk to about one of the most incredible turnarounds in recent NBA history than Miami's own Dan Le Batard. How are you, sir?
Excellent, sir. Thank you for having me on.
How is this? I mean, I last saw you in January when I was in town to write a profile of Bam Adebayo, whom I absolutely adore. You introduced me to Cafecitos, Cuban Cafecitos. We had a wonderful podcast. Then the world ended and everything is horrible now. It feels like 5 years ago, and now here we are. So I haven't been back there. Obviously, I don't know the degree to which life is really happening down there. How is this team resonating in Miami? Because it's such a lovable, hard playing group. How is it resonating locally?
It's interesting from a basketball perspective. I think anybody who loves basketball has to love the ingredients, the elements. There are a lot of people complaining in the bubble. As you know, Zach, the Heat are not among them. You will not hear any complaints. Those dudes like to work. It's part of everything that is around them, and they should be a lovable underdog. They should feel a little bit like America's team because you don't have a lot of 5 seeds beating a 1, especially after that Milwaukee season. But you know how much people have a distaste for some Miami things. So I'm not sure they get to be that just yet, but it is like an exciting time down here because this is something that the Heat have never given us. Never. A team as an underdog that wins a series like the one that it just won. You do not get that from this. Of all the feelings the Heat teams have given you over the years, whatever they are, it has never been this, where they were a prohibitive underdog in a series and they weren't expected to win, even as some people thought, that they liked the matchups. And then to see them win like that is something that has no precedent here, even with all the success they've had.
Yeah, I picked Bucks in 7. And I thought 7 was an indication that I took the Heat seriously as a matchup threat. But just even with the Bucks scuffling a bit in the bubble, it's like the long tail of data and the long track record they have suggests if they figure it out, they're just a better team. And the Heat just absolutely wiped the floor with them. And I think they'll be underdogs again in the next round. Maybe a little bit of an even match against Toronto. I bet Vegas would put Boston as a slight favorite. But I'll tell you, the Heat are probably sitting back in their hotel watching all those dudes play 50 minutes last night and have to play game 7, 39, 48 hours later. And bring it on. We're ready.
Well, for the record, and I was surprised by this, when I asked around some, hey, if you guys had only one team left to get through at the end, who would you want it to be? The choice I got was Milwaukee more than Boston. They liked the matchup that much, which surprised me. I guess we see why in retrospect, especially when, Giannis had the worst plus minus on the court when he was even out there, he was the Buck who was with the MVP of the league, defensive player of the year. That never gets knocked out that way in the second round of the playoffs. Not with a team that's that good, but they did like that matchup.
Well, and for all the, as you said, for all the attention on Mike Budenholzer not playing his guys' minutes and should he play Giannis 42 minutes, but they were losing every kind of minutes. It didn't matter who was on the floor. The Heat were winning that series. And I think part of the reason the Heat liked that matchup, and I haven't heard this directly from them. I mean, we've talked, we have conversations throughout the season. I think there was a league-wide idea that if you hit the Bucks because of what happened to them last year, because some of their guys some of the main guys on their team have a history of shaky playoff performances, I wonder if they'd wobble. If you have the personnel to at least make it difficult for Giannis to get to the rim, and we know the Heat do. And if there's a team in the East that is not going to wobble, that does not care if you punch them in the face, that might actually line up and put their hands behind their back and say, punch me in the face so I get the next shot, it's Miami. That is a tough group of dudes. It's a very Miami team.
Zach, I can't honestly believe that we're here, given that a year ago, if you had asked me, how do the Heat and Pat Riley get out from under bad contract of Dion Waiters, bad contract of Hassan Whiteside, bad contract of James Johnson, no salary cap space at all, how do they extract themselves from that? I would have said there is no way to extract yourself from that. It's not possible. And I think the greatest gift of Pat Riley, and the most underrated one on a resume that is sterling by any measure in that sport is that team, if it's not for Chris Bosh, unprecedented health issues, or Alonzo Mourning, unprecedented health issues, that team, no matter how it reinvents, is always some kind of relevant. Look all around your league, at even just the teams, Zach, that have entered the league since the Heat did, right? I don't know whether it's 6 or 7 of them, but I think it's one finals appearance, never mind a championship. I think all of the teams that entered the league at the time of the Heat or after, it's only the Orlando Magic that have made a single finals appearance. The idea that this team is in a 7th, I guess the Raptors as well, right? The Raptors have won the championship as well. The idea that they're in a 7th Eastern Conference championship game is crazy to me.
Well, you just went through the history, and I think it bears repeating because it makes it more remarkable that they're here. And as you noted, it doesn't just start with those summer of 2017 contracts. It starts with trading 2 first-round picks for Goran Dragic when he was 29, which was a risk. No matter how well he's playing now, that was a risk.
And creating the scenario before it was popular of an adorable Goran Dragic being a precedent center is I'm going to make a mess at my franchise and I'm going to get traded. I'm going to demand a trade because I want to be somewhere else. That was one of the first dominoes to fall in that nonsense, even though he's not as big a star as some of these other guys who have done it.
And they paid a hefty price to get him. And then they set up this team in 2015-16. I wrote a column for Grantland about how this could be the most intriguing team in the NBA this season. They had the starting lineup of Dragic, Wade, Deng, Bosh, Whiteside, right? They had just discovered Whiteside the year before. And then the Bosh situation just goes tragically haywire, and we never really get to see that team. And then fast forward summer of 2016, they chase Durant. They don't get Durant. They say, okay, we got to re-sign our guys. We don't have a lot of other options. Tyler Johnson, 4 years, 50. Hassan Whiteside, 4 years, 99. Summer 2017, after that super lovable team that finishes 30-11 with all these misfits from across the league, misses the playoffs because of a tiebreaker, they chase Gordon Hayward. They don't get him. Say, okay, we don't have any alternatives, really. James Johnson, 4 years, 60. Deion Waiters, 4 years, 52. Olynyk, 4 years, 50. Dan, not one of those contracts hit. Not one. Usually there's one where you're like, that didn't end up being that bad. They're all degrees of bad. Olynyk is the least bad. And not only that, the first round pick that they get, the crown jewel, the guy that they turned down all kinds of picks to draft, the guy who was lauded as like the steal of the draft, this guy's going to save the Heat, Justice Winslow, doesn't really work out and is offloaded in a trade years later for Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder. And yet they are in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's absolutely incredible.
With a blueprint of, at the trade deadline, adding Crowder and Iguodala specifically to bother with athleticism, Giannis, during a series that was going to get into the muck of the half court with the idea. And this season, Zach, no matter what the Heat tell you, okay, this season was absolutely not about winning the championship. It was about being as competitive as they could be to get to next season where they have the salary cap space to chase someone like Giannis if he wants to be traded. And so they made that trade at the trade deadline. Like, all that stuff was Giannis specific. It was not just to beat him this year. It was to beat him and do it in a way that demoralized him so that he would come here. And it's exactly what happened in the playoffs. Like, they got the seeding, the matchup they wanted. And if Giannis is going to get uncomfortable of having to do it by himself in Milwaukee, no matter what he says publicly, that's the reason or the way it would happen, where you look at that series and you're like, I can't do it this way.
Well, and to your point, they telegraphed that by, they trade for Iguodala and there's all this haggling over what's the extension number, how long is the extension going to be? We can't interfere with the summer of 2021. They almost, but don't trade for Danilo Gallinari because the haggling in that situation led them to say, it's just whether it's the summer of 2021 or the price tag for next season, it's just not worth it. We're blowing up that trade. And look, I'll cop to it. 2 years ago on a podcast, I asked sort of rhetorically, I said, I'm not sure who in the league has a bleaker short-term future than Miami. And I said it on TV. It was a TV/podcast. And I said it as the words came out of my mouth. I said to myself, I'm kind of being bombastic TV guy because I'm a little nervous. But I also it
seemed like a safe bet. It seemed you weren't saying something. There weren't a whole lot of people saying that, wow, I can't imagine how bright Miami's future is.
But I will tell you, and you know this better than anyone. They are still, and the difference between Miami and Charlotte and Detroit and Washington, whoever it is they are Miami. And that doesn't just mean South Beach. It doesn't just mean cool ass city, all that stuff. It means they have built something that players around the league look at and say, that's a place that is no bull. That's a place that knows what it's doing and knows how to win. And somewhere along the line, somebody was going to go there, whether it was by trade or, Pat, if he gets in a room, he doesn't care if he has salary cap space. He doesn't care if he has draft picks. You want to come here, we're going to make it happen. And I think much more than South Beach, much more than the good weather, much more than he thought Bam was going to be a star. I think that culture more than anything is why Jimmy Butler is in Miami. And that's the one that really catapults them. In my defense, before the season, I predicted Miami would finish third in the East. I was super high on this Miami team relative to consensus, but I didn't expect this. This is insane.
They got Jimmy Butler without salary cap space. They got him early in the recruitment process. A whole lot of people were calling Jimmy Butler an ego monster who was making a selfish choice that wasn't about winning. And now we look in retrospect, all the teams he's left have gotten worse when he has left there, every single one of them. And he has done for himself something pretty cool in the bubble in terms of just feeling like a winner when we have noticed that he hasn't done a whole lot of winning. Like, that was a fair criticism of him. If he's your number one, are you good enough? But speaking to sort of the culture and the getting in the room and the recruitment, I don't know if I've told you this story. I don't think that I have. But when they were pursuing Kevin Durant was super, super intrigued and inspired by how that meeting went, specifically as it related to them saying to him, hey, the way that Oklahoma City uses you with Westbrook, it's wrong. The game is too hard for you. We will get you easier shots. The game will be easier the way that we design everything around you because we think you're the best player in the entire sport. They were selling him, you're better than LeBron, you're better at this than anybody is. The game is just too hard for you the way that Oklahoma City is playing it. And Durant was so impressed by it that he said, yes, you're absolutely right, and chose a team that would be even easier for him to
that's what I was going to say.
But he took the information from the meeting and he's like, you're absolutely right. I agree with everything you're saying. And I'm going to do it over here because I don't want to do it with you guys. I think over here, it's a lot easier over here.
No, I want to ask you this because you live and breathe Miami. I've had some of these conversations and I know what I've heard, but I wonder if, they sign all those contracts in 16 and 17. They're all bad. They all are degrees of bad. The Heat know, okay, we're in a tough spot now. I wonder if during that time period, you ever sensed a feeling of demoralization from people within the team of, this is going much worse than we expected. Obviously, it's their job to set that feeling aside and grind and grind and grind. Try to find someone with the 14th pick. Try to find a trade like the Jimmy Butler trade. Try to find another guy with the 14th pick. Try to find a Duncan Robinson in the weeds somewhere. But did you ever sense, maybe for the first time, and I don't know the answer to this, a sense of, boy, this might be a dark time for us?
Well, this is where they got trapped, right? Because they do create players, right? Hassan Whiteside, no matter how much we want to laugh at him, Hassan Whiteside, the unearthed 7-footer coming out of nowhere, is something you don't normally see. And they developed him into a player after, by the way, they were winning championships and Shane Battier is pulling him off the ground physically because he's laying down during sprints. And Battier's telling him, hey, we're champions and none of us are laying down and you're over here laying down. They got stuck because after everything that went wrong, could they let a value like Hassan Whiteside that they had unearthed and they didn't think he was worth that kind of money for month after month after month after month? And then all of a sudden they get into a position in the offseason where if they lose him, that's where the demoralization is going to start, where they start just losing everybody, everything. They can't keep anybody. And I remember the moment that I saw Pat Riley, a version of demoralized, because, he's done a lot of winning in this game. He's got this wonderful house in Malibu that's just amazing that he looks at, from the office on his phone, just longing for this house in Malibu. And yet he's still grinding in the office every day. And I'm walking through the hallway with him and they've got all those pictures on the wall and murals and stuff, and he like snorts and spits at not actually spits, but sort of spits in disdain, looking at Dion Waiters and Hassan Whiteside, and he just blurted, "Our so-called leaders." And I'm like, oof, this is not a good place for these people to be.
Well, and you know what though? Well, then I'll flip it around. I mean, I know you talked to Pat. I don't want you to divulge any confidences, but I just imagine knowing, I mean, I've only had like 3 conversations with the guy, maybe 2 even. I don't know him. I know a lot about him. I just can imagine him adoring this team, both because of how they built it and the personality of it. It must be a special team to him. Have you gotten that sense from him?
Well, what's funny about that is how insatiably greedy he is. It's impossible to satisfy him. It's why he's still doing the job. So he's not going to admit to loving somebody for getting out of the second round. Like he's not here for the cuddles, but yes, he likes that this team sort of represents in terms of personality, that everyone's seeing what you're seeing, not just that they win, that you wonder how they win. And then indisputably, holy, those guys play really hard.
Well, and just it's really what they have done. I just don't remember. There have been a lot of teams that have built up from the middle, right? You're stuck in the middle and one trade, one great pick, and you're at 55 wins. I don't remember a team doing that out so quickly out of a cap situation like they are in. And to get Adebayo and Hero at the end of the lottery, to turn the 40th pick into Jimmy Butler and a first round pick and all that. To get Duncan Robinson from nothing, it's one of the most remarkable. Pat Riley bet on his staff to find players. He bet on the appeal of his team to get a star, and he bet on the creativity of Andy Ellisberg and Adam Simon and just the volatility of the market that he could get out of those contracts without as much pain as everybody thought they would cause. And you know what? He did it. It required a little bit of luck. Like, remember that Dallas trade that fell through where Dragic was going to be going to Dallas? I wonder how easy Whiteside is to get off if Yusuf Nurkic doesn't get hurt and Portland doesn't have a hole at center. But you know what? Those things happen. In Miami, because of lots of variables, is uniquely positioned to pounce on them. And Pat Riley bet right.
Not only that, because they haven't had a ton of success in the draft, right? They got Dwayne Wade, but they haven't been a franchise over the years that has had enormous success in the draft. And in Tyler Hero, I don't know if this is a story that's been told before or not, but they're watching his workout, and in his workout they have this like shooting drill that they've had for a long time, and Tyler Hero was better than anyone has ever been in it. Even Ray Allen. Like, there was nobody who's ever been better in that shooting drill than Tyler Hero was. And so they're seeing something there that I don't know that the rest of us were, which is they're saying, and I don't know whether this is true or not, I'd actually defer to you on this because I'm not very good at sort of understanding what the ceiling of players who are 20 years old might be, but they think he can be better than Devin Booker. That seems a bit crazy to me, but they think he can be better than Devin Booker.
Wow. That seems like a lot. I mean, he's only starting to dabble in pick and roll creation this playoffs, really, and he's been quite good at it. He did it in the regular season, too. He's been quite good at it. He's more of a knockdown shooter than Devin Booker. I think that sounds crazy, but just in terms of who do I trust more to make an open three, I think I trust Hero a little bit more. Devin Booker's obviously much more accomplished as a scorer. I'll tell you, though, what was very clear about Tyler Hero from day one was this guy fears nobody, and he's nasty. You can just tell by the way a guy goes to get a rebound in traffic, or the way the guy goes at a veteran in his first 10 games in the pick and roll, or the way the guy takes a shot in the last 90 seconds of a close game. He's just got a little bit of nasty that is very heat and also like very rare for, I mean, he's closing games. He's closing games now over Duncan Robinson. He's making huge shots. Like, you just don't see that in a rookie, let alone the 13th or 14th pick.
He played as many minutes as Jimmy Butler in the closeout game of Milwaukee. And when people look at this team, I know that Jimmy Butler is the star and it reminds everyone, hey, we got 2 stars on this team because he does not hold himself above Bam. They're a little bit different in that he might get the foul calls and the offense might be initiated by him in the fourth quarter, but it's not going to be him Donovan Mitchelling it or Jamal Murraying it. Like, they rotate all of that. I think the best emblem that they have in a uniform for the things they represent, though, is the guy that you came down here to talk to. Like, Bam Adebayo is just a grinder who will do every little thing, and you will not hear a bad syllable about him as he has just physically sculpted himself into, the perfect evolution of today's big. That's exactly the guy you want, a guy who can guard. I mean, Zach, it's crazy. I'm watching these games, and you must marvel at the same thing. I'm like, how the hell is Bam Adebayo lined up at the top of the three-point line against whoever your best guard is? Like, how is he guarding him one-on-one when your best guard is a 6'3", 6'4" guy? And he can guard Antetokounmpo as well. It's crazy. And,
he devours those guys. He just devours them at the basket. They think they've got a little inside position, and he's just like, no, I'm just going to take the ball from you.
The way that I analyze these series, it tends to be very simplistic, right? It's just like, who's got the best couple of players in the top 5? I'm usually going to be right if I bet on those guys over the course of predictable basketball. If they're playing Boston and Toronto, how do their best players line up against each other? Because Bam Adebayo, like, the stat sheets, there are a lot of different things that he brings, and I don't know that there are a lot of players on the court that I'd rather have in any of their remaining series before the finals, before I'd want that guy because it's a two-way game, and you got to play defense, and he's the key to everything they do defensively.
Well, I think Butler has for sure made the case that he's the best player left in the Eastern Conference. I think he's outplayed Tatum for much of the playoffs. He's better than Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry's been spectacular for a lot of the series, but he's better. And Bam, like you said, I mean, he's totally unique between, I don't know that either of these teams has a player anything like him. I think if those teams look at the Heat and say, okay, we have an advantage, it's like players 3 to 6. And on paper, like, Jaylen Brown is a better third best guy, I think, than Miami has, although Dragic is making that a conversation lately. But Miami 3 to 10, they're all good, and they all amplify each other. They all play together in a way that makes them better than the sum of their parts. So, but I agree with you. Like, I said this to Duncan Robinson, who follows you on the podcast here. Like, I heard Jeff Van Gundy say on TV, like, I don't think the Heat have enough to win the championship. People ask me, can the Heat win it? I'm like, I'm not doubting these guys anymore. I'm done doubting them. Like, this has been a crazy bubble. The bubble is no home court, wildly up and down performances. The Bucks end up stinking. The Heat end up being awesome. Who knows who's getting out of the West? Like, I'm not doubting Miami anymore. Just like about Bam, I'm not even putting a ceiling on Bam. Like, you want to look at him and say he'll never average 20 points a game or this and that. Like, I've seen him stroke some 20-footers in the playoffs, and I'm like, you know what? The dude is 22 years old. I'm not putting it, like, I don't think he's going to be Wilt Chamberlain or something. Obviously, there's a ceiling, but I'm not putting a ceiling on that guy.
Zach, help me do this here to close out our time together. Help me get the people around the country to understand that if the Miami Heat play the Boston Celtics have all those top picks, so many top picks, and the Miami Heat don't have any of those top picks. This is a lovable basketball team, Zach. The people do not like Miami. They hold.
Yeah, what? So tell me why that is.
Why people don't like Miami? Because we're swaggering, brown, and oily. What do you mean, why don't they like Miami?
People been to Miami? Miami is, even if you don't like Miami, if you go,
they've been to Miami. They've been to Miami, and they get caught in the bosom of the swaggering, oily brown guy who's got too much chest hair, too much cologne, and he's wearing a gaudy necklace. Like, that's what do you mean? Why do they hate Miami? They hate Miami because they look at all their fans and we're loud and obnoxious, and Have they ever been on South Beach before? Forget the guy. Like, I go to Miami with my family. I don't hang out with those. I don't hang out with the club guys at the game. I'm not at the bars lining up to get into the bum clubs, but I'm at the beach. It's awesome. The food is awesome. The scenery is great. Like, what is not to like? I don't get it. Zach, we will not do better, okay, than you doing that club sound to close us out. I want to hear again Zach Lowe walking through Live, swaggering through Live. He smells a little bit like cologne. And what does the music sound like?
Boom, boom, I can't, something like that. I'll tell you what, if the Heat win the championship and we're ever allowed to go anywhere as human beings again, I will go to live in Miami.
Yes.
For at least one drink.
Yes.
And be the most out of water fish of all fish in Miami.
This is what we will do. We will do, even though that I don't know your marital status. At 4 a.m., we will go out from Live. We will run into the ocean together and with a number of different people, and then our pants will get stolen with our wallet in it because everyone is out there at 4 a.m. There are a bunch of scavengers out there ready to steal money. It is a rehearsed thing out here. People go from the club straight into the ocean in the dark of night.
Dan Le Batard, you are the best in the business. I'm honored to get a little bit of your time. Please go do your actual job and enjoy this Heat playoff run, my friend.
Do again the Zach Lowe walking through the nightclub.
That's all I got. Thank you, Dan. Welcome back to the Low Post Podcast, and I am thrilled to introduce one of the most unexpected starters on a conference finalist team that I can remember in recent NBA history. Miami Heat shooting guard and not three-point champion. I was disappointed in your three-point shootout performance at All-Star. Duncan Robinson, how are you?
I'm doing well. That makes two of us that were disappointed in my performance on All-Star Weekend. But I appreciate you having me on. I've been a big fan of the podcast for a while, so it's nice to be included in it.
Will you ever do it again, or are you just one and done with the three-point shootout?
No, I definitely hope to do it again. After a performance like that, that's pretty much all I've been thinking about is that I want to get back and try to right my wrongs. So we'll see. Obviously I gotta continue to produce on the court to get another invite, but hopefully there's one in my future.
So we are about 12 hours or something removed from your elimination of the Milwaukee Bucks in 5 games. You guys are in the conference finals. So what does the Miami Heat do after a game in Orlando where no one can go home? Everyone's stuck together. Everyone's hanging out. What do you do to mark that moment? Do you go out to a dinner? Was there a team drink, a toast, anything like that?
There wasn't any sort of like organized team event. We definitely spent some time together back in the hotel. There's a crew of guys. There's a Barcelona lounge downstairs, which is kind of like the central bar location. And there's a group down there, and whenever we win a playoff game, they're always blasting music and just kind of hanging. So I'm not a core member of the group. I've been a participant from time to time. So people just kind of duck their heads in and out and just kind of enjoy it. That was one thing that Coach Spo said after the game is, especially younger guys, don't take this for granted. It's my first real season in the NBA, and all of a sudden I'm in the East Conference Finals, and just talking to other guys, it just doesn't work that way. So I'm just trying to enjoy every moment of it.
Who's the core group of music blasters / good time havers? I don't want to say party animals. It's not their party, just having a good time.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I wouldn't say it's any sort of party. Even though if any night did kind of maybe transition into party, it would have been last night. But Myers is a big member of that. Jimmy, they're big country fans, so they bring the portable speaker down and just start blasting music. Goran's always down there as well, and then a lot of the training staff and stuff like that. So it's a fun atmosphere for sure.
Has Myers shotgunned any more beers like in front of the team after his early bubble performance? Was there like a celebratory shotgun last night?
I don't think there was a celebratory shotgun, but Myers will let you know he is a huge Coors Light fan, and he only drinks them if the mountains are blue. So he reminds just about everybody of that all the time. But no, I haven't seen any shotguns. He came on the scene strong right when we got to the bubble with that. It kind of went viral. So, but no shotgun since.
So Giannis gets injured in the middle of Game 4. You guys are up 3-0. I wonder, what does that do to the other team? We know what it does to the Bucks. Oh my God, our best player's hurt. We've got to adjust. We got to pivot. What does it do to the vibe you guys feel like? What's that huddle like when he's hurt and it's clear he's not coming back? Is there a discussion to be had about, guys, this team's still really good? Is there a natural whoa, this is going to be weird? Are we going to let down? What's that first huddle like?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, we hated to see him go down. Playoff time, you want to play teams at their best. And the season he put together was incredible. And just to kind of have those really freak injuries, watching them, it wasn't even really like he stepped on anyone's foot. Just kind of crazy accidents. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Bucks as a team are incredibly capable. I think we saw that in the second half of Game 4. But there was definitely probably a lack of sense of urgency from the start of Game 4, and then it pretty much carried all the way through that we were just kind of disappointed in as a unit. So there was a lot of timeouts, particularly Udonis Haslam. His voice is always heard in those types of timeouts, yelling at us and telling us to lock in and take advantage of the moment. But we just didn't quite have that heightened sense of urgency that we needed to close them out.
Well, you got, although they made you earn it last night in Game 5, there were a couple of times when you guys got the lead to like 8 in the second and the third quarter where I thought, all right, Milwaukee's about to go quietly away. And they didn't. They made you earn it almost all the way to the end.
Yeah, they're tough. I think everybody's, saw it these last, whatever it is, 6-7 quarters. They're more than just Giannis. Chris Middleton is incredibly tough, and sometimes like that when a guy goes down, it emboldens other players as well to be more aggressive. And I think you saw that a little bit last night. Dante played really well, and some other guys stepped up. So they had the best record in the league for a reason. It wasn't just one player.
Bledsoe couldn't make shots, but he was like, that's the hardest I've ever seen him play on defense for a full game. And like, he always plays pretty hard, but like he was absolutely flying last night everywhere, getting his hands on everything. Like, I was like, damn, you can see when a team, like, everyone sort of chastises the Clippers as a flip the switch team, right? Like, oh, they only care when they have to care. But like, every team has gears. Like, no team plays at full gear all the time. And when you see a team that's like backs against the wall, full gear, it must have looked different on the court last night, particularly the Bledsoe, right? You could see it.
He's incredible. The way he starts and stops and covers ground in rotations and closeouts and getting his hands on passing lanes and that sort of thing. But absolutely, we talked a lot about it actually after the Game 4 loss, in that in many ways a comforting place to be is you're back against the wall, in that you kind of understand what's on the line, and you just kind of got to go out there and play. Where we were at is we were trying to manufacture that sense of urgency, and credit to the coaching staff. I thought they did a really good job of just really tapping into that. The day before Game 5, that film session was just all about really growing and building that chip on our shoulder, because truthfully, that's when we're at our best. I think we have a group of guys that really embrace that, understand what it's like to be overlooked, and welcome that and are excited by that.
So take us inside that film session. Like, what are they showing you to sort of inspire that chip or that sense of urgency?
Just really highlighting the discrepancies between Game 1, 2, and 3, and then Game 4, whether it be closeouts, loose balls, 50-50s, rebounds, stuff like that, that we really dominated across the board in those other games, and failed to do so in Game 4.
Well, loose balls is a fun part of your story, so let's talk about that right now. Ramon, you and I talked about it. You were the captain of my Luke Walton All-Stars this year. Ramona Shelburne, who just wrote a fantastic profile of you, hopefully will be popping into this podcast soon when she wakes up on the West Coast, talked about it in her profile of you. Please tell, this is a classic hashtag heat culture story. Please tell the loose ball story, starting with the game against the Westchester Knicks. Are they the Knicks? They're the Knicks, right? The Westchester Knicks. Yeah. In the G League in White Plains, which you have the misfortune of having several Heat coaches in attendance, because the Heat were playing the Knicks the next day. And this is last season, obviously, when you were in the G League. Please tell that story, starting with that game.
I was excited to have them in attendance. They had texted me that they were going to make the trip up and come to the game. So, just a little added excitement for a G League game in front of, I don't know, maybe 2,500 people, if that. So it added a little additional incentive. And, it's not exactly a packed gym. So, of course, they're sitting right next to our bench, like right on the baseline. And we go out there and we actually won like a really hard fought game. In classic G League fashion, we had one of our starters get a 10-day in layup lines. So he just leaves. Yeah. So he just leaves. We have 2 guys with ankle injuries. Another player had like taken off to go play in Europe the week before. So we had like 7 guys. No exaggeration. We played 7 guys. And we ended up winning. We kind of like gutted it out. There was like 4 of us that played 40 plus minutes. And we won, which obviously Miami prioritizes. So I thought that was good. And I hit some shots and I was feeling good about myself a little bit. And throughout the game, there were these 2 possessions. One was kind of like a 50-50 rebound. And the other one was like a loose ball that kind of squirted out that I could have got my hands on. And I should have, in retrospect, just laid out for it, just put my nose on it. And of course, right after the game, first thing that they talk about isn't the win, isn't the shots that I make or anything like that, but instead the 2 50-50 balls that I should have put my nose on. So, of course, a couple weeks later, I get a call up, rejoin the team in Sacramento. And the first drill that I'm doing in pregame warmups, I'm out there like 3 hours before the game. They're rolling balls on the floor. I'm diving on the floor, tapping them in bounds, tapping them back to a coach, sprinting to the corner and shooting a 3. And I wasn't able to shoot like 3s in succession. Like I had to, in order for me to get a 3, I had to lay out basically and just dive and get a 50-50 before I earned the privilege to shoot a 3. So it was hardwired, and that drill existed pretty much through the remainder of the season.
Who's throwing the loose balls, and were they mean? Like, were they throwing them hard and at like tough angles? Like what's the trajectory we're talking about?
It's a combination of Rob Fodor, who does a lot of player development. He's basically our shooting coach, and Chris Quinn, which is a maniacal combination, I might add, because they just kind of play off of one another, and one might throw a crazy loose ball and the other one tries to outdo that, and it just becomes a whole thing. But I will say, like I said, it really did hardwire into me the importance of going after those with a certain amount of vigor and just persistence.
Do you have like old school YMCA knee pads that you put on for these drills?
Yeah, well, that's a Miami Heat staple.
That's practice. Right. You walk into practice sometimes and it says on the whiteboard, pads today or something. You're like, okay, we're going to beat the hell out of each other.
Yeah. So Miami, like I said, that's a staple. Every practice, knee pads, taped, all that good stuff. So, those are non-negotiables.
Without naming names, have you ever had a player in the NBA tell you, I don't think I could play for the Heat. I don't think they're for me?
Short answer, yes. I will say this, though. I think in my experience, I think the perception precedes the reality, in that I'm not saying it's not as bad as it sounds, but I do think that in conversations in different circles, it comes across as almost like crazy. And it's not that. It's just more about just being incredibly diligent, and just, the Pat Riley slogan, hardest working, nastiest, all, down the line. So I have heard it before, but I don't know if it's for good reason.
Have you, Duncan Robinson, ever failed a heat conditioning or body fat test?
I never have. Yeah. So
is there shaming when someone fails? Is there like a public shaming ritual that the Heat have, where like Riley comes down from on high and holds some kind of ritual for the shaming?
It's not as thought out as that. What they will do is they post weight and body fat in the locker room on one of those screens. So actually, when we made a deal at the deadline and brought in some new guys, of course they're enshrined into the weight and body fat ritual. And the first thing they do is post everybody's. And a lot of teams don't hold people accountable to that the way Miami does. So it's natural for it to not be as low. So there you have it, like a couple of the new guys all the way down at the bottom, where you don't want to be, and all of us at the top. And of course they work their way right back into it, and we're right in the mix, a couple of weeks later.
Well, I always tell the story of like when James Johnson had his best year with the Heat, which was of course before he signed his big contract with the Heat. There was a story that came out in like the South Florida Sun Sentinel. It might have been Ira Winderman. I can't remember who it was, about how James Johnson had lost 30 pounds. And I was like, I never once looked at James Johnson and thought he needs to lose 5 pounds, let alone 30. And I asked him about that, and he was like, Neither did I, but it turns out I'm like much faster and much better and still kind of just as strong. I was like, damn, like you can look at some guys, hell, you can look at me and be like, he should lose, X double digits amount of pounds, but like 30 pounds. James Johnson was like a mixed martial arts fighter.
Yeah. First off, I love James Johnson. One of my favorite teammates I've ever had. He looked out for me as much as any player has in the NBA. So special shout out to him. But yeah, I mean, I will say this, that as soon as you're a part of it, I think they do a really good job of seeing something in yourself that you may not see. And they're just going to get it out of you. And it's just the day-to-day approach. Someone like JJ, I'm sure, comes in. The goal isn't to lose 30 pounds right off the bat, but instead, like, let's just try to get this down. Let's see where we can push this. And just day after day, you just continue to push the envelope. And sure enough, after a while, you have that to show for it.
So you guys, I think, are the only team that came into the bubble. And it was immediately clear you guys were better than when you left off the season. Now, some of that is the natural, like you had just added a couple of big new pieces at the deadline. And so you didn't really have time to incorporate them very much before the season was suspended. But like, if you had told me you come in and you pick up right where you left off, that's one thing. You came in, you reinvented your starting five and you got better. When did you have a sense? Obviously, you're apart from your teammates for quite a long time. Then you start having these workouts where you see them from across the gym and you wave to them and that's it. When did you have a sense of like, whoa, we're kind of ready. We're kind of ready for this in a way that maybe is unusual among the other 21 teams that are coming here?
That was a conversation we were all having throughout quarantine, in that we had pretty much all of our guys in Miami the entire time through. And just talking to peers or friends across the league, that really was not the case for other organizations. Guys were not in their cities, were back home in their hometowns, or if they were in their cities, maybe there were a handful of them. But we had pretty much the entire roster in Miami the whole time, going in 4 or 5 days a week, getting workouts, starting to do the weight and body fat again, strength and conditioning on the court. We weren't working together, but we were all doing individuals. So we kind of all agreed that if we can really take advantage of this time, then this can be a huge competitive edge for us. And, when we got to Orlando, we really felt like we were in great shape. And once we started practicing together, it was like, finally, like we'd been tired of just the one-on-one workouts with coaches. And it was just a great feeling to be back together in the gym and get back to work. And then obviously, like you said, those seeding games, there's definitely some feeling out. There's some lineup changes, and a lot of it was due to Kendrick had to join us a little bit later than anticipated, and rhythm is such a big part of the NBA is what I've learned, and just gaining that synergy and playing with each other and knowing where everyone's going to be on the court. So it was a fun stretch, those seeding games, and just kind of building that momentum and starting to realize, hey, we could do something special here.
Kendrick, for the first time last night in Game 5, looked like himself. I thought it was the best he had looked on both ends. He looked confident. He looked crisp. And there was a time during the early part of the playoffs where it felt like maybe he's just not going to work his way back into the rotation. You guys have Iguodala and Crowder now, but I thought last night he really kind of looked like himself again. And all of a sudden, you guys are as deep as you've been all year.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, in an unfortunate circumstance in that he had to go through the protocol and join us weeks late. And, I can only imagine how difficult that would be. And we're all working back into shape together and getting back used to playing with each other. And he misses basically 3.5 weeks of practice and is just asked to come in and play right away. So that's a challenge. It's no surprise that he was maybe out of funk a little bit and not quite in a rhythm. So
no question.
Only a matter of time until he got it back, and we all knew that. And we also knew it's a huge advantage to have a guy like that who's basically started the entire season, that can come in and be a spark like he was last night.
When did you learn we're starting Bam at center, we're starting Jay Crowder, and we're not playing Myers Leonard, or he's going to come off the bench or whatever it was going to be? When did you learn as players, we are going all in on this look, this is our new starting five, this is it?
I think it was the second to last seeding game, I think. Um, we had some different lineups because of guys coming in and out and some rest and doing some different things. So there was some uncertainty of like, okay, this is kind of what we've been going with, but is this permanent moving forward, or what's this going to be? And there wasn't any sort of like announcement around it. And then Goran missed a couple games just because of rest, and they wanted to give him some time. So we were still kind of trying to wrap our minds around what it was really going to look like once everybody was back. And then we just kind of had a team meeting and addressed it. And that's one thing I give Coach Spo a ton of credit on as well, is he really does a great job of pulling the curtain back behind his thought process and just making sure everybody's on the same page. In my career and through my experiences, something that has always frustrated me as a player is you don't really know where your head coach stands, and you're trying to figure out, and you're speculating, and you're guessing, and you're trying to figure out roles. And he clearly defines it and makes sure everybody's on the same page. Just because if you know your role and you're hearing it straight from him, it just gives you a certain level of clarity in your mind, and that this is what I'm being asked to do, and just allows you to go out and do it.
So he just laid it out. This is why I like this look. This is what the rotation might look like, kind of thing.
Yeah, that and also, I think he had a lot of grace towards Kendrick in that, Kendrick has done so much for us this season, and these type of situations are challenging ones. Obviously, it's the decisions that he gets paid to make, but that doesn't make them easy. And Kendrick's done a lot and sacrificed a lot, and to have him, obviously media and stuff would coin that lose his starting spot. But the reality is it's just all about winning. And he clearly thought that Goran and inserting Goran into the starting lineup would help us do that. And it's hard to argue. I mean, Goran's been incredible in the playoffs so far. I'm rocking his hat here, if you can see.
Oh, I didn't know that was his Goran. I didn't know there was Goran Dragic merchandise.
Yeah, I'm rocking.
Is that a dragon? Is that a dragon over a GD kind of? That's
GD
cool.
Dragon. Yeah.
Wow. I got to go to gorandragic.net.org and get some Goran Dragic merchandise. That's quite nice.
I'll see if I can send you one. I know he's got plenty. So,
look, I said a couple podcasts ago, like Butler's been amazing. Tyler Hero, who we'll talk about, has stepped it up in the playoffs. But I think the biggest story, other than the reinvention of the starting five, has been Crowder, and Dragic is playing like an all-star again. And Crowder, you know this, you follow the news. You guys were in semi-serious talks to get Danilo Gallinari at the trade deadline to, I think, address what the team, I'm just guessing, thought of as we could use a little more outside shooting. We could use like a legitimate high-volume stretch four, gunner, marksman, sniper, and that's what Gallo is. But if Jay Crowder is going to shoot like this from three at this volume, you got that with better defense. You didn't need Danilo Gallinari. So that's been, to me, a huge story, is that he's just launching, and he's probably at 38% in the playoffs on like 6 threes a game or something.
Yeah, Jay's been huge. It's funny because, as soon as I got in the gym with him, I'm like, God, this guy can really shoot. And I guess his numbers prior to getting to Miami wouldn't fully suggest that.
They're all over the place. It's crazy how his three-point numbers have gone up, down. He had the one great year in Boston, then down. It's like, I don't know if he can shoot. I guess he can.
I would say the low numbers are the anomaly in that case, just because I've seen it firsthand that he can shoot at a really high level, and obviously he's done it on the biggest stage, and that he's doing it right now. I mean, he was huge for us, particularly this series with the Bucks. If they're going to put Giannis on him, Giannis's strength is that he's just such a good weak side help defender, and he just does such a good job mucking up the paint and just creating difficulty scoring in that painted area. And Jay just having the opportunity to be out there and bring him away from the rim and just make shots at a high clip. I just changed our offense entirely. So I give him a ton of credit. And then also defensively, obviously everybody talks about, Bam being the Giannis stopper, and Bam does a really good job on it as well. But if you watch it, Jay is really the one guarding him for large stretches of the game.
I was surprised. Were you? So that's another thing. So I went in assuming Bam is going to get the primary assignment. You'll put Jay on Brook Lopez. Obviously, that opens up some stuff maybe for Brook Lopez in the post, but like that doesn't scare me as a coach. Like if you're going to force feed Brook Lopez 40 times, go ahead. So I was a little bit taken aback by Jay getting the primary Giannis assignment and Bam being on Brook. Were you taken aback? And again, so when do you get to defensive assignments for a playoff series?
So we pick them. Coach Spo allows us to basically go through the process of who it is we want to match up with.
Wow.
And it's an internal discussion. I mean, it's not solely just based on what one player wants to do, but it's a kind of a community thing. And obviously coaches have their input as well. Coach Spo plays a big part of it, but really it's ultimately up to us as players. And we knew that Bam would spend stretches of time on him as well. But it was all about how can we just give him as many different looks as possible. And the consensus was to start Jay on him, and then just kind of transition in and out and have different stretches where Bam's on him, Andre's on him, Jimmy guarded him for stretches as well. So, but like I said, I mean, I give a ton of credit to Jay. I mean, he had when Giannis went down, he was guarding Middleton for most of that game 4 as well. So his versatility defensively and also just he's a great locker room guy in that he's a leader. He's been through things and won playoff games before, and he's just kind of like a calming presence as well.
You didn't step up and say, "I'll take Giannis. Give it to me. I'll take him."
Yeah, I figured we had a handful of guys on the roster a little bit more qualified than myself to man that challenge.
That's cool. That's cool, though. I think that's a cool bit of like, empowering the players. Because I mean, you guys are on the court. You guys are the ones that sort of feel what those assignments are like. You feel the force of the guy. Can I really handle it? All of that. That's kind of cool. Ramona Shelburne is going to pop in and join us in a minute here, so we'll have some good talks with her. But Bam, I'll tell you. These teams that are trying to go at Bam on switches, these guards that are trying to go at Bam, Giannis, they just have to stop doing that. Like, there's just these guys are getting absolutely swallowed whole by that dude. They have no chance. His defense, I had him second team all defense. I don't think he made it. They just released the teams yesterday. I don't think he made second team all defense.
He was second team.
Oh, he was second team.
Yeah.
All right, so my vote helped. Jimmy didn't make it. That's right. There was some angst about Jimmy not making it. Bam these teams just got to stop going at Bam because it's not going to work out. That dude is an absolute monster, and he plays with like this ferocity that I'm sure you see. Like, he just wants to humiliate you. Like, if you come at him, he wants to just eat your lunch and embarrass you, and like he has no sympathy for anybody.
Yeah, it's been really interesting watching Bam really just kind of ascend onto really the radar of people nationwide. Just because I remember my first experience with him playing in Summer League 2 summers ago, and just seeing this combination of, first of all, like competitive will. I mean, you kind of said it in just his ferocity, but also his combination of athleticism and skill. And so many people want to point at skill of like, can he shoot threes? First of all, I think he can. I think that's in his future. He's not asked to do that right now. But his versatility and his ability to handle the ball and decision make has grown so much since I've known him and since I've been with the Heat. And then obviously, like you said, his defensive potential and versatility has totally just changed our defense, and that it's allowed us to switch so many more things and flatten teams out and just stop teams from getting to those triggers and those advantages. So I certainly, if I was a ball handler, would not want to have him on me. I think it's funny because as a guard, maybe sometimes you feel like, oh, I got a big switched on to me. Let me take advantage of this matchup. But he is certainly not your typical.
Yeah, the correct calculation with Bam is I have Bam switched on to me. Unless I'm LeBron James, let me pass the ball to somebody else, and maybe even then let me pass the ball to somebody else. So it's funny, we're talking about Bam. Bam, I think, was the 13th pick in the draft, or 14, something like that. Tyler Hero is 14, I think. He's taking on an increased responsibility, handling the ball more. You are an undrafted free agent who's now one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. I said this with Lebertard earlier. Like, what the Heat have done as a franchise in 2 years is one of the absolute most remarkable turnarounds for a team in this sense. We've seen teams build from the middle, like 45 wins, and hover, and everyone wonders, are they trapped in mediocrity? And they hit one transaction, and they move up. Like, that's possible. It's really hard. Like, sometimes it requires a James Harden trade or a Kawhi Leonard trade, although the Raptors were better than 45 wins before Kawhi. It's hard. The Pacers did it with like a great series of draft picks back in the Paul George, Roy Hibbert era. I don't recall a team doing it when they looked so trapped into salaries that weren't working out with so little cap space, had traded 2 picks for Goran Dragic, to the point that some moron, i.e. me, on a podcast in late 2018 said rhetorically, but with some honesty behind it, I'm not sure any team has a bleaker future than Miami. And I meant short term. And truthfully, not a lot of people in the league would have disagreed so much. I think there was even within the Heat some, not demoralization, but some realization that this is going to be harder than we thought. But man, to get those guys in the back of the lottery, to get you undrafted, to get Jimmy Butler essentially for a guy who was picked in the late 30s or early 40s in Josh Richardson. Spo gets all the attention and he deserves it. He's an incredible coach. What that front office has done is so far beyond what anyone could have expected. Like, all those dudes, Pat, Andy Ellsberg, Adam Simon, Chet Kammerer, whatever they're getting paid, they should get paid more because what they've done is incredible.
Yeah, I think you said credit can go a lot of different places, but certainly a lot of it starts at the top, and it trickles down. And so much of what the organization stands for is symbolic of how we've gotten to this point. From when you made those comments not too long ago, but I
was not alone. Like, a lot of it was not like a heterodox point of view to worry about the Heat, except what we always said, everyone was like, except they're the Heat. And by that, people meant, even within the league, people would say, man, if this wasn't, I remember lots of people would say to me, if this wasn't the Heat, we'd all be laughing at these contracts. But if it wasn't the Heat, meant A, they have a culture, like those guys know what they're doing. B, their culture is going to appeal to a certain type of star who's going to become available at some point. Boom, it did. And C, they have Miami. Now, I think Miami as a city was pretty low in the hierarchy of like why Jimmy Butler wanted to go to the Heat. But it's not, I mean, I don't want to name any other cities, but it's one of the 6 cities in the NBA that players are going to try to get to. And lo and behold, all of those things, and you guys are in the conference finals. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It's interesting looking back to last year. Obviously, that was my first year in the NBA, and I'd hardly played at all when I was up with the Heat. But I really did gain a lot of perspective in that for much of the year, we were just outside the playoffs, maybe the 7-8 seed, hovering in that kind of area, like you said, just kind of mediocrity. And, we had conversations, and I remember Coach Bo having conversations with us as players of, there are a lot of organizations that would basically start playing for ping pong balls and start looking at, okay, how can we play the young guys? I don't want to say not try to win, but basically position ourselves better moving forward. And he was adamant that that's not what this franchise is about. That's not what we're going to do. And I think it created meaningful games in that stretch, and that we were vying for that 8 seed. Last year, we didn't get it. But there are younger guys who gained the experience of what it's like to basically play in playoff games, and that every single one of those games was like an all-out must-win for us because we were battling for, I think it was Brooklyn and Orlando for those 7 and 8 spots. And I think that you can't overlook the experience that really guys like Bam got in that stretch, and that what it means to win and impact winning. And I think you saw the experience that he gained there on full display this year. And just that, I think one of the biggest separators, and granted, I only have my perspective in playing for Miami, but from everything that I've heard is that every single game is prioritized in Miami, every single practice, every single workout, and all the way through. So it's, it's kind of a coming to fruition of all of these habits and all of these day-to-day things kind of on full display here in Orlando.
Let's welcome in the one and only Ramona Momo Shelburne and reunite her with Duncan Robinson, about whom she just wrote a wonderful profile. I would imagine you guys had to do a lot of fact checking together, a lot of texts, a lot of conversations. You got to get those details right. I thought the story came out great. I thought it nailed Duncan's journey really well and personalized it. So Ramona, just you take over for a second. Get Duncan to talk about some of the best G League stories or some of the best journey stories or the time he bought and returned a Louis Vuitton bag. I give you the floor.
Well, the fun part about doing the story, Zach, was, Dunk's a little, he's pretty humble about his journey, but he was smart. I don't know. He was brave enough to give me the cell phone of a couple of his best friends who then proceeded to tell me all these things. And I was like, wait, what was that story about the Louis Vuitton bag? What was that story about he never told me any of this stuff initially, right? So I think it was your friend Harry who told me about when you bought you said you've always been a good dresser, but not fancy, right? Never fancy. And you had some NBA purchase. I guess that was, he goes, ask him about his first big NBA purchase. If he bought some fancy bags.
What color was the bag? Are they all brown? Is that the only one I can picture is brown with the LV and gold? Is that the only one they make?
No, it was, I will say this, it was relatively understated for a Louis Vuitton bag. I know usually they just want to throw their, emblem on everything, but it was just kind of like an all black, Louis Vuitton bag. I got it with Ryan Anderson. He was in town. I think it was a preseason game. We played the Rockets, and we grabbed lunch because he spent a little time in Miami the year before, and we had kind of developed a friendship. And he was like, "Dude, you can't keep wearing this Michigan bag," because I showed up to lunch with a Michigan bag on. He's like, "I'm taking you to get a bag." So we go to Louis Vuitton, of course, in the design district. I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I don't feel great about this." And he's hyping me up, no, you have to. You're about to go on a big road trip, your first one, all this stuff. And finally he convinced me to get one. And then of course, a couple of days later, the road trip comes around and I just can't bring myself to actually pack that bag and bring it on the trip. And I just leave it in my room. And it was sitting on a chair right next to my bed. And it was just I felt like it was just staring at me, because I wouldn't use it, and it was just sitting in my room. And then finally, a couple weeks later, my sister came into town, and I was headed to a game or a shoot around or something like that. And I was like, is there any way you could just swing this back to Louis Vuitton and return it? Because there's no way I'm ever going to use it. And I knew I couldn't return it because I had made a big deal about buying it. It'd taken 30 minutes to buy it. Finally convinced myself to buy it. So I knew that they would remember me. So I was like, I can't go back. So I just had her do it.
Well, one of my favorite parts, Dunk, was when you go out to this. It's like a fancy juice bar in South Beach, and I'm always cognizant when you go to anywhere with an NBA player, you don't want to be You want to make sure they're not recognized and besieged by autograph holders and stuff. And so we go to it was a hipster kind of place. Where was North Beach? Maybe it's called Dirt. I remember this place. And we drove over there in Duncan's Jeep, and we pull up, and there's not really any logical place to sit where he's not going to be recognized or anything. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe we can go to the corner. And he's like, don't worry, no one's really going to recognize me. And I was like, yeah, but you're an NBA player, you're pretty tall. And then he says to me, he goes, yeah, but I don't know, people don't think I'm tall. I guess you don't appear tall to other people. Is that a thing?
I think it's more so that I'm kind of in that in between height. I'm 6'7", 6'8", but if I'm not standing all the way up, you could look at me and I get all the time oh, you're pretty tall. What are you 6'4" or 6'3" or something like that? And I just kind of run with it in that I'm pretty normal looking, relatively unassuming. So I feel in general, I'm pretty anonymous, which personally I love. And I would hope that it stays that way, particularly in Miami. And in a city like Miami, there's a lot more important people running around than myself. That's for sure.
What's your wingspan?
6'9", 6'10".
Oh, that's it. It looks like your arms are. It looks like your arms are pretty damn long. But I get
nothing crazy. More so just skinny than long. It might be an illusion.
So did anyone recognize him? Is that the end of what's the end of the story?
No one recognized him. And then he doesn't tell me at all about this Jeep. Okay, this Jeep I had to go to Harry and his mom to figure out this Jeep was a pretty important car in his life, right? So who's on the lease of that Jeep, Dunk?
Well, actually, I recently the lease ran out, so
Finally, okay.
the Jeep is no more. So I'm actually currently carless. I don't have a vehicle. Before I got to Orlando, I returned it, but that Jeep will always be near and dear. Mostly just because my senior year at Michigan, I was a part-time Uber driver as well. So I had a lot of good rides in that Jeep, a lot of time on the road, and a lot of great memories. So it'll be a tough one to let go.
Whose name is on the lease though? What's that story?
Well, it's my name. Originally, when I had first taken it over, there was a whole thing about I didn't know that I could be on the lease, so I waited for my mom to come into town to take over to co-sign the lease, and my friends gave me a really hard time about that.
Okay, that's fine. You're young. You're young. Ramona,
it was so endearing to me when I found that out later. I was like, oh, he's in the NBA and his mom's on the lease.
Ramona, we already talked about the loose ball drill that you wrote about in your piece. What were some of your other sort of favorite? Do you have a favorite G League anecdote? Because I have a couple, but do you have a favorite G League story from?
I like what Harry was telling me, that Harry Raftery is his best friend, and they were kind of like training buddies. And Harry was on that team with you for a little while, right? He made the G League team.
Yeah, that was kind of a crazy circumstance. Basically, our G League team in the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season got absolutely depleted. We had a couple call-ups, a couple guys go overseas, and all of a sudden we had 8 guys under contract. And a really good friend of mine, Harry, had been working out and played college basketball and was trying to break into the professional ranks. And I was close with Nevada Smith, who was the coach in Sioux Falls at the time. And I was like, look, I have a friend of mine who would love to come and be a practice player. And he's like, when could he get here? And I was like, he will literally drive here starting right now. He will leave within an hour and drive to Sioux Falls overnight if he has to. And he's like, all right, well, we have practice tomorrow. Let's hope he can be there. And of course, Harry showed up and was there for practice. But we never actually played a game together because I shortly got called back up to the Heat. And he played a couple games in Sioux Falls, but and lived in my apartment out there, but we never got to play together.
One thing that Harry told me about you being in Sioux Falls was it was the first time they started running plays for you. It was like he was watching the game, and every time you're in the game, every play is for you. He's like, oh my God, I don't remember this at all at Michigan. I've never seen a team run a play for him.
Yeah, I'd also like to clarify in the article, and I'm sure I said that. Yeah. Obviously, the lunch that we had is now months ago. I think it was back in January. Feels like forever ago. But I would like to point out that Coach Beilein also did run plays for me at Michigan. It was just much fewer and far in between than it was in Sioux Falls. And even now in Miami.
Did they have animal names?
They did have animal names.
What was it?
Oh, well, we had the Jungle series. So we had lions, tigers, and bears. That was it was more so those were action calls, not so much plays. But yeah, that's a fun Beilein.
If I had a play named for me, I would want to pick the animal. I wouldn't want my coach to pick the animal, and I think I would spend 4 days thinking about what I wanted it to be. I love penguins. I love turtles. They're not exactly fierce animals. I don't know if I want the coach. Turtle. Bald eagle. Bald eagles are badass. I might go bald eagle, something like that. So Spo once told me about the G League. He said when they sent you down, when they were going to send you to the G League, he said, I told Duncan 2 things. Number 1, I want you to shoot 20 threes in a game. That is that's a lot. Number 2, I'm going to send you there and you're going to guard the best player, the best scorer on the other team every single game, and you're going to get lit up sometimes. You're going to get burned sometimes. I don't care. I just want you to do it. So the threes we know you can shoot. It doesn't matter if you took 20. Did you really guard the best player every game, and how did it go?
I did for the most part. I mean, obviously, if it was like a center,
Yeah, sure. The best wing
like
scorer,
a
perimeter
yeah, exactly. So, I was basically forced, but I also welcomed it and was excited for the challenge, to guard like the best wing player. And the G League has a ton of talent. In my opinion, an incredibly overlooked league, and that there are a lot of incredibly talented basketball players, and there's no shortage of scoring. That's the other thing. And guys are aggressive and can get them up. So that was a great learning experience for me, and just challenging myself on that end of the floor. So I did, in that I was asked to shoot a bunch on offense and then guard the best player most of the time. So I learned a lot about myself that year for sure.
Did they light you up, or did you hold your own?
Oh, they got the better of me some games. There are definitely some growing pains, but that's how it goes. I mean, when you put yourself in those vulnerable situations and are competing against really talented players, that sort of thing's going to happen. It's more so about just, can you continue to learn and grow from it, and just try to apply it moving forward.
Ramona, you led off your story with a really, I thought, touching anecdote / whatever about imposter syndrome, and about Duncan feeling. I think we all feel this, frankly. Like, I feel it when I'm on TV.
Every
I'm
day.
like, this is insane. Like, what? I'm just an idiot. Ramona? How did you learn about that conversation? Who told you about that? And were you almost uncomfortable bringing it up with Duncan, or did you feel like, because that's a vulnerable thing, but did you feel okay bringing it up?
Well, he and I actually talked about that a lot at lunch, right? Didn't we talk about that? I forget how I think you just brought it up because we were talking about people who you listen to, and you listen to JJ Redick's podcast a lot. Duncan studies like everybody. You study Joe Harris, you study Kyle Korver, you study JJ Redick, and I guess I think I maybe brought it up. Just this idea of like, can you believe that you're in the NBA now? Like, you were at Williams College a couple of years ago. And I think you brought up that JJ Redick had always talked about imposter syndrome. And I knew how close he and Spo were, but once you told me that story, then I went back to Spo and he kind of fleshed it out a bit.
You still feel that at all anymore, Duncan, or are you no longer an imposter? Are you just a belonger at this point?
I still feel like it creeps in every now and then. I mean, doubt is a very real thing. And, for much of my career, and what a lot of my career has been about, is really convincing myself that I belong. And whether that be the jump that I made from high school to college, Williams to Michigan to the G League, and then G League, to the Heat, it's always been a process of really growing that like deep internal belief that you're capable and that you're good enough. And, I'm not one of those people that just kind of has that irrational confidence. And I say that as a positive, and that I wish that I did. But the reality is I'm kind of like a classic overthinker. I overanalyze and hyperanalyze every situation. And much of it requires, first and foremost, knowing that I'm prepared for opportunities, but then also actually experiencing success and having my work and my preparation come to fruition in terms of, whether it be playing time or making shots or helping a team win. So it's an ongoing process, and it's an ongoing battle. It's not something that just goes away, but instead you just kind of learn to grapple and deal with. Have
you felt the increased attention from defenses in the playoffs? Like, okay, my actions have been scouted to the nth degree. It's a little harder for me to get open. How else can I help the team? Have you felt that?
Absolutely. I had this conversation with JJ Redick not too long ago, and I was just kind of picking his brain on, you hear so much about playoff basketball and how it's almost talked about like it's just a completely different brand of basketball. And I totally get that now, and that there are very, very distinct differences. I think he said it really well, in that for guys like us, it's basically very similar to one of those regular season games where you go into it and you feel, okay, this team did a really good job of scouting and had a really good game plan set. And that's game one. And the crazy thing is game 2, 3, 4, and as the series goes on, teams continue to make more adjustments. So as a player, it becomes, okay, how can I make an adjustment to their adjustment? If they're going to try to take this away, how can I be creative and find another way to be effective? So it's like anything, I'm just trying to treat it like a process of continuing to grow and learn. And I've had struggles in games where I haven't been as impactful as I've wanted to be, but at the same time, that's kind of indicative of what my journey's been all the way through. And then I just want to continue to be persistent and continue to just try to help my team win. Well,
Zach, one of the things that I kept hearing when I was in Miami or getting ready to do the story is how much Spo really liked Duncan. Like, it was just, I remember, I think I missed Spo before the game. Like, Nick Friedel did that move where he like cornered Spo. And I was like, hey, I was supposed to talk to him right now, right? I think he was doing another story. And he goes, I'm going to call you about Duncan Robinson. Don't worry, I'm going to make time for this. And then he and I ended up speaking on the phone for quite a while because he really, like, I think he really sees it. I mean, he may not have put that together until I said that to him in that sense, but he is you, right? He's the video coordinator who, like, people didn't take seriously initially, especially when he's coaching the Big Four. And I think that, like, there are a lot of hallmarks in just, once you stop questioning yourself and you start just believing that you are the guy, you are destined for this and that you belong there. Everything kind of lets go, right? I mean, and I liked his line when he said, when Spo said, you can't be a sniper out there when you have switch clutter. Like, if you have that much clutter in your brain, like, you can't, you're thinking, oh, do I belong? Is this my job? Is this my role? You're not thinking about just making this impossible shot that you need to take now.
Yeah, absolutely. I very specifically, before the season started, before training camp or anything, Chris Quinn, Coach Bo, myself, and Kendrick and Tyler, we all grabbed breakfast, and the three of us, Chris Quinn, Spo, and I, drove back from breakfast, and I remember him saying, he was kind of just poking around, asking about my high school career, this and that, and he had known a little bit about it, but he had just kind of said, like, oh, I kind of understand it now. It makes sense that you don't necessarily view yourself as this as he deemed it, world-class shooter. And that the moment that, I remember him saying, the moment that your esteem catches up with your skill set is when you'll really be impactful. And that kind of sentence really stuck with me, in that I realized that I really needed to grow that and really grow that confidence and belief that I was really capable of helping Miami Heat win games. And he really, a ton of credit to him, he really helped grow that.
I have 3 rapid fire questions to end with. One that dovetails with what you just said and what you said to Ramona and her wonderful profile. Do you still have to run wind sprints if you pump fake out of 3-point shots and don't take them?
I don't have to run wind sprints, but it will get talked about, and I will likely get crushed for it. We're playing every other day right now, so
there's no time for wind sprints anymore.
Yeah, the volume on the legs, we're trying to keep on the off days at a minimum. So, but it is definitely talked about for sure.
Were you surprised that the Bucks didn't switch more of your actions, specifically sort of your 2-man guard actions on and off the ball? Forget the stuff with when you're running off Bam and Brooke Lopez is not going to jump out at you. But were you surprised they didn't switch more?
I thought it could have been a potential adjustment, and it was something that we talked about, but that's also who the Bucks are. They're not going to switch out the ball. They're going to protect the paint, and they're going to stay true to those principles. And as the series went on, it wasn't so much that they made adjustments, but more so that they just kind of doubled down on their philosophy of doing those things. So I wouldn't say it surprised me, but it was something that I was thinking about as a potential adjustment. But obviously, they didn't end up doing.
Now, you're harder on yourself than anyone, so I feel comfortable asking this question. You got back cut a couple of times in Game 4 and once in Game 5. Have you been yelled at by the coaching staff for this? Has this come up in film session, or are you still angry? I can tell you're already shaking your head. You're mad. Sorry, I noticed. I know. I'm sorry.
Oh, man. No, I don't apologize for noticing. I'm sure everybody watching noticed. It was hard not to notice. That's a incredibly frustrating sequence. I guess all 3 of them. Particularly in Game 4, having lost that one, to go back and watch that game and watch that film. It's always better to watch a film session where you're making mistakes after a win, and that you're able to learn from it still, but learn from it in a much better spirit. hopefully, the only thing I can say about that is that there will be a heightened sense of focus moving forward in those areas.
Will you go to Game 6, Toronto-Boston?
I wouldn't. I don't think I will. No. If there's a Game 7, I think we'll try to go to that. They actually haven't really given us a lot of opportunity. I know we could go to seeding games, but since the playoffs started, it's pretty much all those extra seats have been reserved for family.
Oh, that's right. The families. That's okay. Fair enough. I don't think you should go and root. I think you just should go and scout. Just the Heat should make their presence known. We are waiting for this next opponent.
Right.
Last one. You said to me offline before, I don't think I'll ever have another teammate like Jimmy Butler as long as I play. What do you mean by that?
He's just such a unique personality. First and foremost, his competitive spirit is incredible, and I think that's well documented and talked about enough. But just his off the court personality. He's such a fun dude to be around, and just his ability to kind of like move in and out of his on court persona and his off court, but still kind of maintain that edge in both. He's just a fun guy to play with. I say fun as in it's fun to win. He's challenging to play with as he expects a lot out of you, but truthfully, that's what I want, and I think that's what everybody on this team wants, and that we want a leader that's going to demand our best. So you talk about the back cuts. Of course, I'm going to hear that from Jimmy first and foremost, and it's on me to bring a better version of myself to help us win. And he'll let me know that. We talk a lot about in our organization about having these direct conversations, in that Jimmy doesn't go to Coach Spo and say, why is Duncan getting back cut? No, Jimmy comes right to me and says, maybe with some expletives in there as well, why are you getting back cut? We're trying to win a playoff game. And it gets rid of that kind of lost in translation that can happen when it goes from player to coach to player, or player to coach to, down the line. Instead, it's just like man to man, let's have a conversation about it. It's just all about solutions, finding solutions, and finding ways to help us win.
Well, you guys have found a lot of solutions. You're going to need to find some more, whether it's Boston or Toronto. But I'm not doubting the Heat anymore. When people ask me, can the Heat win the title? I say, why should I say no at this point? Why should I rule it out? So your story is incredible. Thank you for giving us a little time. We'll continue to watch. Ramona, thank you for popping on. I know it's crazy out there, and you've got some stuff going on. Your profile was fantastic. Everybody should read it. It was on ESPN a few days ago. Duncan, continued good luck, and Ramona, stay safe out there.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys having me on.